So today I'm going to demonstrate how to do the couching stitch. With that particular stitch, I'm going to outline this area that I tinted earlier. I stenciled this area with an oil paint, and now I want to not fill it in, but just kind of showcase it. Let the tint come out and let a different thread design come around the outside of that. So that is one aspect that you can use the couching stitch on. You can also, and I'll demonstrate this in another video, couch down an applique. And then in another video, I will show you that you can couch down a specialty thread, something that's real thick that you certainly wouldn't be going in and out of fabric with, but you can couch it down and incorporate it into your work. So there's a lot of different things that can be done with this design. What I've gone ahead and done is I've taken two pieces of, and this is Trinway silk, it's called reeled silk thread. 8/2 is the size that I've used, and this is made in China and hand dyed in Colorado. So I love this thread. Very beautiful. So anyway, what I've done is I've went ahead and anchored this kind of, we'll call it the carrying thread. It's just going to ride along the design. And my job with this thread is just to make sure that it stays nice and straight. So what I'm going to do with my working thread is do the same thing. I'm just going to go ahead and go back here under some existing stitches just to kind of get it anchored a little bit. You don't need to go that far, maybe about an inch or so. And I'm going to come back just a tiny bit in this direction just to get it anchored. You can do that any way, that any stitches that you already have going, just get it back in there. We're going to flip it over here. We're going to come up on the left and go down on the right, very perpendicular. I'll move that thread out of the way. And we are just going to couch it. Again, this gets moved just right along with my work. I'm following the outline of this design. And the biggest thing to remember when you're couching is you want to stay perpendicular to that line. So this is always directly across from this, and when I say perpendicular, it's like an intersection. So this is my line coming up here. I want to be perpendicular right from that line. My stitch should be no wider than about a little less than 1/8 of an inch. And then you also want to make sure that this doesn't get twisted. We're going around a curve here. It's probably one of the hardest things to do, is make sure that those two threads stay parallel with one another. And we are already couching here. Again, stay very perpendicular. This is a very easy stitch to do. And we're going to move these threads right over here. It's okay that got lifted because we'll pull it right now. I'm just coming up about 1/4 of an inch away from where I just came. And I'm going right back down again, perpendicular. Get that out of the way. Perpendicular, coming right back up 1/4 away. Making sure that these stay parallel with one another. I'm going to have to move my hoop here, just so we can keep moving. Perpendicular. Now you can imagine if you didn't go perpendicular, these would be going slanted and sideways, but if you stay nice and straight, perpendicular to that design line, just like an intersection, you'll get beautiful stitches. Another thing to remember is too, this can always be adjusted with your fingernail. If you need to pull or kind of move things or make sure they don't get twisted, always check your threads and make sure it's untwisted. Maybe hold it in place with your less dominant hand. And take a bite into your fabric, again perpendicular. I'm doing this in a sewing motion. If you felt more comfortable doing it in a stabbing motion, meaning you're actually going to go down into the fabric and pull it out here, by all means, that works very well with this, this particular stitch as well. I kind of lose a rhythm. And so since this is surface embroidery, crewel work, definitely try to implement that sewing motion. It'll give you a rhythm and your stitches will go nice and fast. But sometimes when I'm couching around an applique, which I will demonstrate in the next section of this video, I need to do it in a stabbing motion because the fabric when I'm couching just gets so thick. So I need to actually do it by hand like this just to penetrate that fabric. Taking on more of a stabbing motion stance, sometimes that's necessary when I'm actually couching down an applique because the fabric just gets so thick. So I have to do more of a kind of a stabbing in and out motion and anchoring down my carrying stitch this way. So basically I'm going to work all the way around this design line, coming back up here and ending right here. I'm going to end right here inside of the same line, and then that's going to be covered or disguised with another kind of couching stitch. And then I'll take it to the back and just basically bury my threads right underneath those existing long and short stitches. And that's it. That is the couching stitch. Okay, so this is just kind of my last basically application of the couching stitch and what can be done with it. And so obviously, you know, all those wonderful kind of specialty threads and yarns, and this is more for kind of maybe a landscape embroidery, an abstract embroidery, or where you're just basically showcasing different stitches and you have this wonderful thread that somebody had compiled together and you're like, you know what, that would work great here, either as part of a tree trunk or as part of maybe some greenery and vines. And so I'm just going to show you how to anchor those down with the couching stitch. So basically I've just kind of come up and just made just a little kind of a holding stay stitch for this up on top. What I would do later is I would go ahead and probably clip those pretty close and work them within the embroidery where they just don't need to be there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down, again come up about 1/4 of an inch, and this can be adjusted because now this is kind of more free form. We're just kind of putting this down. We're just going to come back down again, kind of parallel, just a little bite, and we're going to place this just kind of in just a random fashion. I'm just going to show you how I can move this thread around anywhere I want, but the object is, of course, to always stay perpendicular. I'm going to come back down over this direction, come back over here. You may even decide to untwist this and have it go in completely different directions. I've been kind of putting a twist in it because I think it's real pretty, but just gives you an idea of what can actually be done with a stitch. And isn't this great? I mean, it just shows you, I mean, you simply couldn't put this within this needle and do stitches with it. The holes, there wouldn't be a hole big enough with it. The thread would get all messed up. It would be more of a headache. But if you have threads out there or leftover threads, this is what can be done with them. Yarns or anything you've kind of compiled, and believe it or not, even material from outside you can use. Say like you find a really interesting piece of bark, and you're working in an area that either has like a foreground or maybe a bird's nest. Why not incorporate a piece of bark? You can do this kind of the same thing, cut up into little areas, and you can either like stitch it down or couch it down. So that's what we're doing here. And that's it. Just another idea of what to do with the couching stitch. So thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Leave them in a comment box. And again, this is Natalie Richards with Paint by Threads, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.